What is up, everybody? Thank you for hopping on. I got Jason Aponte with me. There he is. Let's go. How's my guy doing today? How are we doing, Jason?
Good, man. How are you, Brad? It's been a long road, man. I feel this week I really feel like I don't know if it's a sense of relief or just straight up like not burnt out, but man, now that all this is over, we get to relax a little bit, and just kind of analyze what happened and not really get too crazy. It's just I felt like the lead up all the way to this draft was so much. It was so much, honestly, just based on the pressure and all that stuff. But now it's like a sense of relief. You get to chill for a little bit and I couldn't be more happy. I took 2 naps today.
My guy's rested. He's ready to go. Yeah, there was a ton of lead up, and we're actually still seeing some of the fallout come out after that, right? Like we're seeing national media reporters arguing, Mike Silver, Benjamin Albright.
That's crazy.
Michael Lombardi. Dude, it's crazy, man. So it's been a lot on everyone, not only us as fans, as media too.
Mm-hmm. My thing is I'm a little disappointed, Brad. What happened to all the Mac Jones people that told me, "Oh, I can't wait to see your face when it's Mac"? In here, like, are they good? Thoughts and prayers? Are they okay? Are they good? Just because I haven't seen them. They're not in my YouTube comments anymore. I don't really see them in here. There was, a few people in particular in your comments that were like, prepare yourself for Mac. I can't wait to see your face. Thoughts and prayers, bro. It's been a week. How you guys holding up, man? How's everybody doing? How those guys doing? How's that crowd doing?
They're probably doing fine because if they are 49ers fans at the end of the day, they got the right quarterback. They didn't get Mac Jones. Mac Jones, unfortunately, isn't the guy that really shouldn't have been even elevated that far up anyways. But as the aftermath has kind of come out, the 49ers selected Trey Lance over Justin Fields. You were there in Cleveland. Tell me what it was like being there, where the draft was being held, and did you run into other Niner fans? Like, what was the vibe like out there?
So it's funny because, while we had trollers inside the 49er fan base, it seemed like the NFL fan bases were also thinking the same thing. So I get off the plane, I'm wearing my gold jacket, and someone walks up to me and they say, "Hey, happy Mac Jones Day." And I said, "No, not going to happen." I was just like, stop. And they were like, "Well, I hope not." I'm like, "Well, you don't have to hope. It's no. The answer is no." But I think that when it was Trey Lance, because I did run into a few 49er fans, they were excited. A lot of them had the same sentiment that we did. It was just straight up like anybody but Mac at 3. I think that because we were in Cleveland, when the pick came across in Ohio, those people were upset because they are big Justin Fields fans over there. And
that's right. Ohio State.
Right. When it got to a point when Justin Fields was sliding down the board and Justin Fields was going, we sat with a group of 49er fans. When Justin Fields got picked, we got up and applauded. Like, we were happy, for him to go to Chicago, and we wish him nothing but the best, honestly. But, there were a group of them that were like trying to take a video of us like, "Oh, y'all are sick right now." And we're like, "Look, we didn't make the pick. We wanted him, but we're happy for him too. We also want to see him succeed no matter what." But no, honestly, look, the vibe was crazy. Cleveland was an amazing town. Honestly, they did an amazing job with the experience at the stadium, with linking with other fan bases, and you start to see these super fans, right? Like, one guy is walking around with like the Texans like whole logo on his head. Another dude is like dressed to the T as a Dallas Cowboy. It was awesome, man. It was just an amazing experience. Next year in Vegas is going to be so insane, honestly, man. I get nervous because, here's a quick story. Getting to the airport, my flight was at 6 to come back on Sunday. Needless to say, I was a little hungover, is the word.
Partying a little too much.
Yeah, so I can't imagine Vegas will be anything, short of craziness. But honestly, this was an amazing experience. You got to meet a bunch of people that you look up to in the industry. You got to, meet a bunch of fan base, people from the fan base. And it's just another notch on the experience belt. Honestly, we're able to do something that I dreamt about doing when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's awesome that you got to experience that whole situation live and go through that whole process. We talked a little bit about Justin Fields. I think the prevailing theory amongst most Niner fans was, we had the ability to watch Justin Fields in 2020. We got to watch him go to major bowl games. We got to watch him fight through adversity. Whereas Trey Lance, we just didn't have that experience. We weren't able
Right.
to. It wasn't. They weren't created equally, if that makes sense. So I understand
Right.
why it was really, really easy to root for Justin Fields and want him. But now that Trey Lance is the pick and he's our guy moving forward, the future of the franchise, and the dust is settled. I know you've probably gone back and watched some of the tape and got back into it. How are you feeling now since that wave has passed and Trey Lance is our guy?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, so like I said, when I started my quarterback evaluation process, it started with Trey, and I fell in love with him immediately. Right? It's not until I got into Justin Fields tape that I started to say, okay, now this is really who I want, just based on the games that he had been playing in, and you mentioned it. You're talking about a guy who played last year, played at a high level, played in bowl games, played through injuries. So, I became enamored with Justin Fields, but that never changed the way that I felt about Trey Lance, right? I'd say the only thing that's really changed now is that the more that I watch him, the more I feel less that he needs to immediately sit. I would like for him to sit, that's fine. If that's the case, that's cool. But I don't think it's like a straight up he needs to sit type thing. I don't know if it's straight up that. So yeah, I think what I learned was the kid, does all the things that I liked. Honestly, let me put myself back on Wi-Fi because I think I'm going in and out. I think that when I looked at Trey's tape now, I saw all the things that I saw before, but now I really get an understanding of what Kyle wants him to do and what's going to happen with him going forward. And I feel much better now about it. And I think that, now I get exactly what Kyle was looking at.
Yeah, and exactly like you said, I think most people who were evaluating these quarterbacks to truly try and understand, anyone who watched Trey Lance, I'm not sure I heard anyone watch Trey and come away and be like, you know what? I just don't like what he does. Like what he puts together. We don't see it translating to the NFL. The only thing that it kept coming back to was no 2020 tape. And he was 19 years old the last time we played. So a lot of that played into a lot of the Fields talk because we as outsiders, we don't have that same information that they're working off. We're not at those pro days. We're not having those conversations. And what it seemed to come out of this process was they were blown away by the person, right? Things that I say this to you all the time, right? Scouting integrity is the hardest thing to scout. And that's the reason why we don't know these guys. We can't get and talk to them, figure out how they think, put them up on the board, see how they process information, see how they spit back information. Those are huge aspects in the grand scheme of scouting. So when we're trying to do our best to evaluate, we don't have everything at our disposal, whereas these guys, they got it all. So clearly, and what's came out from that situation was they were really blown away by the person, the intelligence, the character, the integrity, all of those things combined with him being 20 years old and just like he's basically this crazy, they say, in the scouting community, body beautiful, like he's built the right way. He's got the throwing motion and he's got all of that. So after that process has gone through, like I think we can all get behind it and say, like, we understand why they went with this pick and now get really, really excited about it because we know there's no more guessing. It's no more, is it Mac? Is it Justin? Is it Trey? We know now. So now we can put our heads in the right position and start visualizing how this team is going to look in the future, right?
Right. And I think the arguments have shifted now, obviously, from who's the pick at 3 to now does Trey start? and what happens after that. So I think that's going to be the argument that's going to carry us all the way into OTAs and things like that. So, and you were right. I wanted to touch on one point. When it came to Justin Fields, I felt that he was more ready to play right away just because he has played and he's played in those big games and things like that. So again, when people talk to me about ceiling, I feel like when they say ceiling and upside, that's just a way for them to describe something that they can't quantify with words, or they really, so when I ask people those things, it's like, okay, so what makes his ceiling higher than Justin Fields? They always just say, well, the arm, well, Justin Fields has a cannon, oh, well, he's fast. Well, Justin Fields is really fast too. So it's other stuff, right? So I think it's the other things that you touched on with, like you said, the person, the intelligence, calling out protections, running Shanahan concepts and running them before he had to install them for him in a pro day. He ran them at NDSU. He ran a pro-style offense. You can point to the competition, but those throws are big boy throws that I don't think anybody, whether the competition is there or not, would be able to stop. He's hitting leak concepts that our quarterbacks on this roster, all three of them last year, couldn't hit. And he's doing it with regularity. So, and when people say that he has accuracy issues, they're not saying that they're interceptions. It's just like, he'll throw it where it, maybe it's got to be on one shoulder, it's on the other shoulder sometimes. That's something you can work through. The kid's 20, but he rarely makes a bad decision. And I really think that's what coach is looking at. He's looking at the intelligence, being able pre-snap to do what he can, being able to bail coach out, also the intelligence to know where to go with the ball. I understand that he didn't turn the ball over. It didn't throw any interceptions that year, but when you go back and you look at the film, some of them were dropped. So that's the context that you miss on the context that you miss when you just look at stats. So, but I think all of those things combined is what Kyle was enamored with, and I really like what John Lynch said at the press conference about, I always wanted Trey, but I never wanted to tell coach because I didn't want to pollute the process. I believe is what he said, and I thought that was really cool. And so when he said, "Hey, you ready to take Trey?" Lynch was like, "Are you serious? That's who I wanted all along." I thought that was pretty cool too as well. So I think after the press conferences started to happen, we started to learn a little bit more about the process, and it makes you feel better about it because coach really dug in. He talked about going to Cabo and watching film for hours and hours and stuff like that at a beach house, which is like a major flex. Oh, I went to Cabo to go watch film.
Right.
I was like,
just to go watch film.
I was like, right, you couldn't just do that at home. But yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, I think that it's gonna be I think that's gonna be fine, and I like the process that they went through to get to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think 49ers fans can feel comfortable, at least from the intelligent standpoint, intangible standpoint. I mean, he's built the right way. So it's not like we have a guy that has a ton of questions or anything. The only questions come from is just we didn't see him in 2020, and that's it. And as fans, that is harder to decipher than a team that has every asset available to them. They can talk to his coaches, they can talk to his family, they can talk to his trainer, anyone. So they are going to go out and fact find, and they felt comfortable with what they had over Justin Fields. And so with that being said, and landing on Trey, and we're both really excited for what Trey could become, especially with Kyle Shanahan. How do you feel? You touched on it earlier. How do you feel about Trey Lance starting week 1? Do you think that's going to happen? How do you envision that process from here until week 1 going?
Oof, this is going to be an ongoing thing, right? And I think that
right.
I think here's the problem with all of this, right? So, Jimmy Garoppolo makes what amount of money, whatever it is. We don't have to really keep talking about that. But here's the thing. Here's what I fear with Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe this fuels him and he goes out and he wants to show the world that, he's a baller and basically find his way on a new team, right? Maybe that's possible, right? Here's my fear though. If he starts, okay, because I don't think you can bench him outright because that's a $26 million backup. Doesn't make any sense, right? But here's the problem. Let's say week 1, the game is in Seattle, right? Because we know the schedule comes out Wednesday. Game's in Seattle week 1. He airmails a throw. He underthrows somebody. Maybe he comes out and struggles. The Lance crowd starts to beat the drum. It starts to get louder and louder and louder. And he's going to have to sit there and stand in front of his locker or stand in a press conference and answer questions about it. Kyle's going to have to answer questions about it. When is Lance ready to go? Are you thinking about making a move, right? So here's the part that really worries me. It can go one of two ways. Jimmy Garoppolo can take this and go ahead and use it as a way to just say, you know what? F the world, I'm going to go crazy on them. Or if this sort of pressure starts to, weigh on him a little bit, especially if in a big game he doesn't perform, or maybe the team doesn't get off to a good start right off the bat, then that only gets louder and louder and louder. And honestly, from all accounts from Trey's people is that they have no inkling of an issue with him learning this playbook. I mean, obviously, what are they going to say? But I think the intelligence part is what you talked about, right? So he runs all those concepts. It's just the verbiage. And there's a video floating around of coach calling a play. It literally took him about a good 5 seconds, 7 seconds to run through every single word of what it was, and that's the type of stuff that you need to look at. When people say the offense is complicated, it's complicated in its verbiage. That's the thing. So yeah, my fear is that this competition, it can either spur Jimmy Garoppolo into playing better, or it can be a detriment to him and the team and have this hanging around as a discussion point every week. Oh man, should you play Lance here? Oh man, Jimmy struggled. What are you going to do next week? Those sort of questions are going to happen the entire time. So I just suspect that this is long from over. And when training camp starts, once those videos start to come out of Trey making an amazing throw or making a crazy run, then people are just going to take that and run with it. And as Michael Lombardi says, the outside pressure, we did it. We stopped them from getting mad because they listened to us in the front office. So
right.
Yeah, we did it. We did it. We did our job. So yeah, so if we start to beat the drum for Lance, then coach is going to say, you know what, the fans want Lance, let's do it. So but right. Yeah, I just envision this is the beginning of a long saga, honestly.
Absolutely. And you detailed how it could go for Jimmy. And if things don't go as well right out the gate for Jimmy, it could be a long season for him. But I can also envision a scenario where, guess what Jimmy's been doing for the last 4 months? He's been sitting back, working out, watching Twitter, watching the headlines, watching his coach tell him, oh, he's our guy, he's our guy, after every single time they go out and flirt and trade with someone. Then they go up and trade to 3. Then they grab the quarterback of the future, right? He's the franchise. Jimmy, we used to call Jimmy the franchise. Well, when you draft a young quarterback at 3, he's immediately the franchise. That's how it works. So there is a world where Jimmy is sitting back watching all this play out. A trade didn't work out or facilitate to another team. He's coming back to this roster. What if we get fiery Jimmy? What if we get 2017 Jimmy back? What if we get that guy who actually puts up a fight and competes? Because honestly, I think that's how this situation needs to play out. Jimmy's on the roster. Yeah. It's got to be an open competition. We're not giving Trey the job. Trey just doesn't, we just don't give it to him. He's got to earn it, and vice versa. Jimmy's got to keep it. And I think in that scenario, we'll see the best out of both. I think we'll see Jimmy elevate his game, and I think we'll see Trey Lance elevate his game, because if it's a true open competition, there's nothing like competition that elevates, performance, execution, things like that. So there is a path where maybe we see a fiery Jimmy who comes out and just blocks everything out and just takes off, and then Trey sits for a little while. But I think the point is true. Let's say Jimmy comes out, he plays well, and he plays good enough to hold on to the starting job. It's what happens when he throws that first interception. It's what happens when he fumbles, misses that first read. It's just going to be a tough situation amongst 49ers fans, because clearly, like we said, you draft a quarterback at 3, that's franchise now. So everyone's just waiting. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting season. It's going to be an interesting season, but I think I think it is beneficial to both Trey and Jimmy to have an open competition. What are your thoughts on that?
So one more thing, too, that's kind of interesting is I think we kind of know with the small time that Jimmy Garoppolo is here is he's not a practice player. He's a gamer. So in practice, if this is what we're going to base the competition off of, that could be a problem, right? And I'm not just talking about the 5 interceptions right before the Denver game type thing, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. It just seems like Jimmy isn't as good of a practice player. He's just like, when he's up on Sunday, he's a gamer, right? So what is this competition going to be based on? Is it going to be based on what's going on in training camp? Is it going to be based off our preseason reps? So that's really what we need to start to think about. So if it's based on practice stuff, Trey has a really, really big advantage, I think, in that regard, because Jimmy isn't he's more of a gamer than he is a practice player. So, but if it's during, if you're going to go by preseason games, it depends on who's going to get the snaps. It's just going to be super interesting. And I feel like it's going to be fluid. If the kid starts to take off immediately, they're going to start to put more on his plate. If Kyle feels like he understands, they're going to put more on his plate. And when we talk about this stripped down offense that Jimmy Garoppolo has been operating, Trey Lance can operate that, because they're just going to run the ball 30, 40 times and get him open with play action and get him going. So it's really funny to me, because everybody thinks that they're just going to give Trey the whole Shanahan shebang. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think you're just going to see him get a turbo package of what this stripped down offense has been for all three quarterbacks, not just Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not trying to, take a dump on him or anything like that, but everything has been pretty much just straight up off bootlegs, play action, things like that. Trey can do that. There's guys wide open all the time.
That's what he's great at.
Right. And most of the time, the first read is the one that's open. So you're not really asking him to go through progressions. Like, it would be a mistake for you to throw Trey in and just spread everything out and just say, go through your reads and hit guys open. That's not how this is going to run. So Shanahan's going to push his offense towards Trey if he is the starter week one. That's why I really don't have many concerns as far as him starting week one, because I know that coach is going to put him in the best position to win.
You're exactly right. And there is no rush. There is no need to push Trey into the starting role. Let him develop on his own time. He's 20 years old. That's why you drafted him. You drafted a kid. Again, he's still a kid. I could not imagine going into the NFL at the age of 20. I just can't. I was still playing college ball at the age of 20. Like, I can't imagine being the third overall pick, having the weight of the world and a franchise on you as a kid from South Dakota or wherever he's from, but he played at North Dakota, to then go to one of the all-time greatest franchises in sports history, the San Francisco 49ers, with great legacy at that position. So I think you're absolutely right. There's no need to rush him in. There's no need to push him to the front. Let Jimmy and him compete, and we'll see what happens in practice. But we could see a scenario. I don't know if you remember when, Russ came into the league and they had Matt Flynn, I believe it was, in Seattle. Flynn. They paid him a bunch of money as the veteran to come in.
Remember, he threw 6 tutties in a game, and they let him. It was
over against Detroit, I think, or something like that, when he was with Green Bay. And then he goes over to Seattle, and they draft the kid out of the 3rd round. No one's expecting anything from Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson's built different, and we know that. And so when he showed out in preseason, they said, that's it. That's enough. That's good enough for us. And I believe even before that, I think Matt Flynn might have been with the Raiders, or I forget who the Raiders coach or quarterback was, might have been Schaub. But Derek Carr, when he came in as a 2nd rounder, he won the job in preseason. So now with the new schedule, we're going to get 2 preseason games, right? Is it 2 or 3 now? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't. I mean, honestly, they sent us out the mini camps and all that stuff is going to look like, but I don't know if it's certain what the preseason count is going to be.
I know it's reduced because they added a game, so there's 17 games now, and then they reduced preseason, so it's 2 or 3 games. But that's 2 or 3 opportunities where I think Trey Lance 3. I think that's where we find out. I don't think you run into preseason game 1 as Trey Lance as your starter. You don't. Everything is going with Jimmy, and then we see how they handle the situations, and then we go from there, and then we see what happens week 1. But it's gonna, I think it's gonna be fun. I'm kind of excited. I know for a lot of people it means more debating Jimmy or Trey for a couple more months and all that kind of stuff. But I'm excited because I love competition. I do. And I know these players love competition. And I know even if they don't like it, even if Jimmy doesn't like what happened, it will fuel him, and he will either be forced to raise his play or bow down to the rookie. And I guarantee you, as a man, he won't back down. He's going to fight. He's going to come back, and he's like, all right, he's going to help him on. And that's, I think, one of the coolest things so far about this process and what we've heard from Trey, what we've heard from Jimmy, is that Jimmy was the first person to reach out to Trey Lance. George Kittle can't even get a text back from Jimmy, but Jimmy reached out to Trey Lance, the first 49er to reach out. And Trey said that meant the world to him. It meant the world to him and his family that they can have a relationship and work together while still competing, but it's not this awkward situation. So now I think as this team goes through, OTAs, mini camp, and camp, it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. And we got a lot of key competition at a lot of spots: running back, guard, wide receiver 3. Who's going to be the main DB back there that's going to be running around. So I'm really hyped up, honestly, for the competition because, when both you and I talk to players, right, they always talk about how it's the guys on the other side that make them better, but it's also the guys in your room that make you better. So I'm really, really excited. And are there any battles that, like, based on how the draft has played out, seeing the 49ers take 2 offensive linemen, 2 cornerbacks, safety / linebacker, 2 running backs, is there any position that you're extra intrigued? Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking on the quarterback, and so I think we're clear on that. But any other position based on who they selected that you're excited to see how that camp battle plays out?
Well, real quick, before we get into that, I wanted to touch on your Jimmy Garoppolo point. One, Jimmy Garoppolo is doing the most classy thing possible right now, and I applaud him, honestly, right? Because he's been through the situation. He talked about it when Tom Brady was there and he got drafted. It wasn't nice, and it wasn't always nice all the time. So he's already doing something that Tom Brady didn't even do, right? And I put nothing but respect on him for doing that because he doesn't have to do that. The other thing is, too, is Jimmy Garoppolo is playing for his playing career this year. This is another thing on top of what's going on with him and Trey. No matter where he lands next, he has to be able to prove that he can get through a full season and play at a high level. So those 2 things, right? So what am I looking for? Wide receiver 3. So when you saw nobody come off of the board for them as a wide receiver, right? It surprised me a little, but then they signed Austin Watkins, who we love, right? And also, one more thing, Brad. Did you see how many people from the Senior Bowl were drafted? It's like you had to be at the Senior Bowl if you get drafted.
You had to be at the Senior Bowl, dude. It was insane. We I think had 5 guys at the Senior Bowl, and I include Lance because remember, me and you
was there. Oh my
God. We were there. You and I, we were sitting there. We were walking around because we're going talking to these players after the game, and we're walking and we're talking, and I'm looking through Instagram. Of course, I already follow Trey, and I look at Trey's story, and I'm like, dude, look. Or like we were walking out the gate or something. I was like, dude, look, Trey was at the Senior Bowl.
And we tried to run back in.
Trey, where you at? So Trey was there.
Trey? I mean, honestly, who would have known that we would have had a chance to talk to the future franchise quarterback of the 49ers?
I know, right? If we saw that earlier, we would have been on the hunt for Trey. But the other thing, to your point about the Senior Bowl, is like that, again, these are all guys that they got to spend time with. John Lynch was at the Senior Bowl. Remember? Like Adam Peters was at the Senior Bowl. They had like 6 or 7 scouts. I walked past them like 4 or 5 times. They were there to do their due diligence. Ambry Thomas was there. Banks was there. Jalen Moore was there. Elijah Mitchell was there. And then, of course, like we said, Trey Lance was there. He wasn't playing, but the reason he was there was to do all the meetings and do all the in-person stuff and all that kind of stuff. So that's why he was there. And, of course, to also probably support guys like Raduns and things like that. But it's crazy, man. The 49ers came away just with all these Senior Bowl guys, man. It was wild.
So wide receiver 3 is the one that I'm most interested in, right? So you didn't see them draft anybody, right? And then when you heard them talk in the press conference, he said, well, Jalen Hurd is on the mend. I am very interested to know what that means and how much they're willing to count on him, right? Because now there's a log jam at wide receiver 3. And I still want this team to add either Golden Tate or Dede Westbrook. One of those 2 to this room, honestly, to be a wide receiver 3. So who's going to be wide receiver 3? Is it going to be Hurd? Is it going to be Richie James? Is it going to be Austin Watkins? Would it be Golden Tate? Would it be Dede Westbrook? So there is a world where you need to add another wide receiver because look, we love Deebo Samuel, but hopefully the injury bug doesn't get him this year. And depth is wealth, right? That's what you see this team doing. That's why they took 2 running backs. They're taking more cornerbacks, right? You heard Coach talk after the draft about how we can't let this happen again with all these injuries. So honestly,
and they talked about avoiding players with injury history as well.
Injuries, right? So I mean, the thing is that you get yourself a wide receiver 3 who can sit in the slot. So that's either, like I said, Golden Tate, Dede Westbrook. Those are guys that you can have for almost nothing right now. Now that the free agency market is kind of dried up, and then you're talking about throwing Austin Watkins into it as well too, who. That's my prediction to actually win this job. I know the kid once we got a chance to, watch his interview with Javi on the 4th and Goal podcast. And I got a chance to listen to what he was talking about. And his work ethic is insane. You had to hear him describe the one drop that he had his entire college career. He knew the play, he knew the situation, he knew the route, everything. This kid was he looks sick talking about this one drop that he had in his entire career, honestly. And he talks about being mislabeled because he's from UAB and people not caring about them. But honestly, and every coach is going to say this, but the coach said this is the best kept secret in the draft, honestly. And I think that he fits that big slot role so well because he can separate deep. And he's also tough at the catch point. And that's it. Like, honestly, wide receiver 3, there's a void missing with Kendrick Bourne because he would go sit at the sticks on those big third downs and make those clutch catches. Austin Watkins is bigger than him, and he can do all those things. So Austin Watkins in that wide receiver 3 competition, I can't wait to get a look at that and figure out who's putting themselves apart.
So one of my favorite things about Austin Watkins that I'm kind of excited about, obviously, we've been on him since the Senior Bowl. That's where he stood out to us. We watched him live in person and just tear it up. And we're like, oh, yeah, we like this guy. And then, of course, Javi, great grab getting him on the podcast, getting to know him as a person a little bit better. So we've been following Watkins throughout this journey since the Senior Bowl. I've been following him on Instagram. We DM every once in a while. He archived all his posts. He took down his profile picture. I feel like he's about that business right now. I think he is genuinely upset that he was not drafted. And I think, like you said, you talked about the person that he is. And he wanted to take care of his mom, right? He wanted to take care of his family.
So that's what I was going to say. His mom works 3 jobs. And she was the one who pushed him into school, right? And so this was the real big quote from that interview that really, really got to me. Someone asked him, "Hey, what do you do with your first big paycheck, right? What do you do?" And look, 21-year-old kid, 22-year-old kid probably say something like, "Buy myself a nice car, buy myself a," and that's fine. That's exactly where my mind would be. Right. He said, "I want to take my mama out to a dinner, and I want her to quit one of those jobs. You ain't got to work 3 jobs. I want you to work 2. Again, work ethic. And when I wrote an article on 49ers Goldmine about it, I labeled it "Got It Out the Mud" because that's exactly what it is. And you want that mindset, exactly what you were talking about. He comes in with a chip on his shoulder, and God help anybody who's going to try to cover this kid because he's upset and he felt like he should have been drafted. Yeah, and good. And the last thing that he said too, he said, "You haven't made it in this league until you get your 3rd contract." Wow. Imagine hearing that from a kid who's never even been in the league yet.
And dude, it's wild because I think all of that is going to play into, again, him coming out and competing because at the end of the day, he's a competitor. And, we were able to watch him at the Senior Bowl. Remember, at the game, he didn't play because he got hurt early. And I was looking at his body language, and I was like, man, I don't know what's going on with him. He looks pissed. Like something's not going right because he wants to be on the field. Yep. He wants to be out there competing. And the fact that he's an undrafted free agent coming to San Francisco, unfortunately, I don't know if he can do all those things that he wants to do for his mom yet. And that he wanted to accomplish by getting drafted. So now I think the fire is hotter than ever for Austin Watkins Jr. Obviously, we have a little bit more insight into who he is as a person, but I think he is about to ball out. And I agree. I think he could really slot in to that wide receiver 3, rotating in with Richie James and, whoever else fits the bill. But I'm excited about Austin Watkins, man. I really am. He could be legit. So with that being said, what about River Craycraft? We forgot to mention River Craycraft.
I knew you were gonna bring him up, or somebody was gonna ask about Travis Benjamin or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen Travis Benjamin in the chat.
I'm not counting on that. That one I'm not counting on. So
yeah. So it'll be interesting. How that position plays out at wide receiver. If Jalen Hurd shows up, if Richie James shows up, I think Richie James is kind of a hidden gem, just buried on our roster, has never been able to get a true opportunity. And when he does get his opportunity, he tends to do something with it. But that being said, let's move to the running back room. Okay.
Ooh.
So we have Mostert, we got Wilson, we got Jermichael Hasty, Austin Walters. Those are the running backs that are currently under contract. Wayne Gallman. And then we go ahead and we trade up into the third. Last time the Shanahan traded up, it was for Joe Williams at running back when he went to go take a running back, and that didn't work out too well. I don't even think he saw the field once. But I think we can both attest Trey Sermon's a little bit different. And then grabbed another Senior Bowl guy in Elijah Mitchell with the last pick. How do you kind of see that room playing out?
Yeah, in my eyes, I think that the odd man out is Wayne Gallman. Just when you look at his contract, and he has no guaranteed money. He's a very solid player, though. That's the thing about Wayne Gallman.
Really good.
I like him here, but I think that he is actually. And being in Jersey, I got a chance to watch him up close and personal. With the Giants, and you and I play fantasy football. When Saquon Barkley went down, Wayne Gallman was fine, even in that bad play calling that the Giants had. So he's a very solid player. Right. I just think he's the odd man out, right? And when you look at how they went about this, right? Also, I'm going to take another mini victory lap. I had plenty of people telling me that the 49ers don't value running backs. Hello, wrong again. 2 running backs in the same draft, and it's because you have to fill the position. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, we love them, but they're not under contract next year. Both also have injury concerns. Also, with an extra game, you need to insulate yourself with as much depth as possible, right? And here's how you know that the 49ers are looking to the future. One, Trey Sermon profiles as a back that the 49ers haven't had in a while since Frank Gore. Talking about bell cow, straight up, like 15, 17, 20 touches, put the ball in his belly. But Elijah Mitchell profiles exactly like Raheem Mostert. Speed guy who needs one cut, go. And that's how you know that they're moving forward in the right direction and they're looking at this roster in the right way. So, yes, everybody always wants to say, hey, Shanahan hits on undrafted free agents. Yeah, he does, but that's not how they go about it. The Shanahan's value production, and they saw it there. I wanted Javonte Williams. When Denver took him, I was pretty upset. But I will absolutely live with Trey Sermon, who I believe is still going to lead this team in rushing as long as he's on the field and he doesn't miss any games. It's just that with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, they'll be the starters. They'll be there. But the problem is how many games will they play? Will they be nicked up at all? And that's the thing, But I mean, this running back room is loaded, honestly. And if Raheem Mostert plays every game with Trey Sermon and all these guys, this running back room is loaded. And the 49ers could rush for how many yards this year, honestly? So I love the moves. Depth is wealth. And this team actually addressed the position that I thought they would because, I had people telling me there's no way they draft the running back. No, you have to draft the running back because now they're cost control for 4 years. And again, when you look at the way that their skills line up with what's going on in the running back room, it's a no-brainer. Elijah Mitchell is what Raheem Mostert does. Trey Sermon is something that this team has been looking for as far as the bell cow goes. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that Wayne Gallman is the guy that's going to end up being the odd man out. Probably a camp body, probably leaves a little bit earlier than that. And if you're going to stash people on the practice squad, I feel like that'll be Jermichael Hasty, and that'll be probably Austin Walter.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also, too, very excited about that room. Of course, love both Mostert and Wilson, but I love the potential of Elijah and Trey. And I think you hit it perfectly on the head. When you watch Elijah Mitchell, he runs a lot like Mostert. Smooth, but deceptively fast. Great vision. They find the hole, cut through, gone. And then when you look at Trey Sermon, he's a little bit more of a thumper between the tackles, but guess what? He's still athletic. He can still run through you. He can run over you, jump over you, juke you. He can do a little bit of everything, and that's kind of what Wilson is kind of like. And you mentioned it. We have the team has to, you put your business cap on. You understand that the team is forecasting for the next couple years to come. It's not about just next year or the year after that. It's multiple years in advance. And if you can get these guys going now and start preparing them now, and then you start mixing them all in. And I agree. I think Wayne Gallman might be the odd man out because I don't think the 49ers are going to carry 5 running backs plus Juszczyk. I just don't think. Yeah, I don't think that will happen. So based on that, it's just a numbers game. But the competition in that room is going to be crazy. This is the deepest I've ever seen the 49ers running back room, I think, ever. I mean, when you look at the potential of healthy Mostert, healthy Wilson, plus you add Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, someone I loved from the Senior Bowl, you can totally see how if all these guys stay healthy and we get back to running the football, which is exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants to do anyways,
right?
We just punch guys in the mouth, and it's Mostert, Sermon, Wilson, Elijah, and just back-to-back and different personnel groupings and all this different, like you can do all different kinds of things with all these different kinds of guys. So I'm really excited. And again, of course, it's security, it's depth, it's everything that the 49ers need. So honestly, I feel really, really good about that. And then a perfect segue and transition to the 49ers. They invested in the offensive line. And I talked about this, I felt like almost every show when we were discussing that, is because I always felt they should bring in another offensive lineman. Even as a huge Dan Brunskill fan, he's on his last year of his deal. He got tendered. He becomes a free agent, I believe, next year. Laken Tomlinson hasn't been extended yet. So, and then you see the moves in the draft. So now, again, back to building for the future, not just this year. You can start to see that playing out. And when they traded, I want to know your thoughts, first of all, your feelings, first of all. When they were sitting there at 43, you got Azeez Ojulari, you got Trevon Moehrig, you got a ton of studs sitting there, and they traded back for an offensive lineman. No cap. Tell me how you're feeling.
All right. So first initial, why? Like, oh no, like, but I see the vision, right? And you talked about it. So this entire draft showed you that the Shanahan's going right back to what he wants to do, and they're going to go straight back to bully ball. That's it. And that's what I'm talking about with Trey starting week 1. It doesn't matter if Jimmy's starting week 1 or Trey's starting week 1. This team is going to run the ball 30, 35 times, and you're going to have to try to stop that. Godspeed to you now. So the part that I get enamored with when it comes to starting Trey week 1 is, again, we talked about it. Those RPOs, right? Ball in the belly of Mostert. Debo's running this way. Now the linebacker has to sit because you're attacking all 4 principles. Could it be Mostert? Could it be Debo? Could it be a pass, or could it be Trey taking the ball and running with it? By the time that linebacker deciphers that, Trey's already passed him up at the second level. So this is what I'm talking about. The 49ers are showing you 2 things. Protect the franchise, and 2, we're going to get straight back to running the ball down your throat, honestly. Godspeed to you trying to do that. So this entire draft showed you that this team is going to go right back to what they want to do, and it tells you their strategy moving forward. So they're not going to drop Trey off and just spread everybody out 4 wide and just say, go make your reads. No, this is going to get right back down to basics of we've got tackles.
Remember the Minnesota game? Remember that playoff game?
That's it.
That's what we're going to.
That's it. Tackles and guards who are going to be able to move out on swing moves and get out there and get in front of people. And now you've got the running back room and the offensive line who are, now Banks is young, so is Moore. Now you've really made yourself in a position where you don't have to start Tom Compton in case things go bad, even if he's on the roster. And like you said, we love Brunskill and everything, but when you take Banks in the second round, that's kind of indicative of how you really feel about him. And it would be hard for me to say that he's not going to start at this point, unless Brunskill just is crazy with it in training camp. It's just the investment is too large into the lineman for him to, we love Brunskill over here, but the investment is too large in Banks. And honestly, Banks is so good in pass pro, honestly, too. I thought that was something that was a knock in his game, and it's really not. But when I saw you say I love the Banks pick. I was sold, Brad, because I know that you know your O-line play, and that's the one thing that I learned when I first met you, honestly. So when you said it, I was like, I'm sold, man, because I believe in your evaluations, and you really know what you're talking about when it comes to that.
I'm not gonna lie. When they made the trade back and selected Banks, I was like, what? I was like, what did we just do? I was like, I'm so confused. What's happening? Why are we doing this? Why did we pass on these guys? Why did we give the Raiders Trayvon Morig? I was like, my head was going through. Like, I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, I hadn't scouted Banks. Like, my fault. Admittedly, I didn't know who he was. Like,
I get questions like that all the time too, and I just say I don't know, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna look.
And that was it. Like, and me and Jordan, when we were doing the show, we were preparing for it. We were like, they're gonna take someone that we like aren't expecting. They're gonna take someone that we haven't watched because they do that all the time. It happened with Joe Williams. It happened with CJ. It happened like they consistently find gems, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so when they made the Banks pick. And again, being an offensive lineman guy, loving offensive linemen, knowing we needed more offensive linemen, I was like, what did we just do? It's like, who? And so while we were doing the whole, coverage, I threw on the tape because I had to know. I needed to be able to know who this guy was and talk about him. And it took maybe 3 or 4 plays for me to understand, like, oh, I know exactly why we took him here. And then after 1 or 2 games, I'm like, oh, why wasn't he a first round pick? And like after 4 or 5 games, I'm like, did we just draft a future all pro? Like, honestly, like, and that was my progression. It went from upset, why, how come, to this might be the best pick, arguably in the entire draft, based on the value, based on trading back that allowed you to land Trey Sermon.
And he replaced Quentin Nelson. That's no easy, I think we all understand that Quentin Nelson's the best in the game. And I'm not saying that he's going to be like that, but those Gold Domers, man, it seems like the 49ers have an affinity for them. And, I don't know if this, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like, now I'm back to the tinfoil hat stuff. I don't know if this is really to like really help Mike McGlinchey too, because then you get 2 guys who are, remember when you go to Notre Dame, you have to be smart. That's not negotiable. Like, you have to have a high GPA. They're not going to let you play. They don't let you skate on that type of stuff. So they're all smart guys over there, and I don't know if maybe the Notre Dame connection would be something that is going to, look, again, we love Mike McGlinchey, and Mike McGlinchey just, when he makes his errors, he makes them in the biggest moment, right? And then it gets magnified. But, I have issues with the way that he goes about sometimes his press conferences talking about, well, I had a good game today. Well, yeah, you're supposed to have like a good game a lot of the time. Like, it's not supposed to be like, here and there. So my thing is that maybe you plug them both together and you have them next to each other, and it invigorates Mike McGlinchey too, who, just got his 5th-year option picked up as well too. So, I mean, I went through the same emotions of, okay, now I don't know who this guy is. But then, like you said, when you get a chance to watch him, you're like, oh, man, he's moving guys off the spot. He's really athletic. And the pass pro thing, man, it's really good because people, like, you understand, if one guy is lacking in pass pro on the line, then the whole side can go down. And that's the thing, right?
The whole line fails if one guy fails.
Right. So if you shore up that right side, man, things get a lot easier, for Mike McGlinchey and for whoever's the quarterback that's going to be starting week 1.
Yeah, and I'm really excited again because at the end of it all, if Trey Lance is to start, if Jimmy Garoppolo is to start, we all know that we're going to get the best out of them if we're running the football and we're executing play action, and we can't execute play action if we're not running the ball. Right. So that all needs to work together. So the Aaron Banks selection, although at first was honestly jarring, it put a instant pit in my stomach because for the circumstances. You trade with the Raiders, the Raiders get one of my guys, in Morig and all of our guys, and they grab him and we go and get this guy that I never watched. But like I said, man, I'm not sure I can count 10 reps that he failed, like out of all the games that I've watched.
Wow.
He is so good at executing his responsibilities, like on top of the his size at 6'6", 320 pounds, and the ability to move the way he moves, unparalleled. You don't see guys, you don't see guys move like that who are that big. And one of my favorite quotes from the press conference, like it just got me so geeked up because it's how I feel. But when Kyle Shanahan said, you need to move a little bit different to be in this club, I was like, hell yeah. I was like, that's music to my ears because Aaron Banks is that. He moves different.
Yeah.
He moves so much different than you would anticipate because you look at him when they showed the couple clips that they pulled on the draft. They pulled terrible clips, first of all. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. He's huge. They made him look slow. I was like, what's going on here? But then you dive in and you see the footwork. You see the base. You know, some of the things that we have noticed with McGlinchey, and McGlinchey struggling when it comes to pass protection and things like that. He's struggling with his feet. He's struggling with his depth. He's struggling to anchor. He's struggling with his technique and foot placement in pass protection. And you look at Banks and you're like, oh, he's got that. He's really good at that. And arguably his best trait are his feet for his size. And so I'm really excited, as you can tell. Really excited. Went from really distraught to really excited, and not very much time at all.
Right.
The other cool thing too about him, this dude had like 30 offers coming out of Alameda. Like he was a guy. You know, it's not like Alameda here in California produces a ton of D1 talent.
Not Lineman City.
No, it's not. And so this dude had like over 30 offers. He's one of the top prospects in the country. Goes to Notre Dame, balls the hell out, and he's a guard, so they just kind of float under the radar unless you're Quinn Miners with your belly hanging out and doing all those kinds of things. But he just kind of floated under the radar, and then once you take a look at the tape, blown away. So then it translates into, again, run game, play action. That helps the quarterbacks, helps the running backs, it helps everyone. So understanding, and of course, they also drafted Jalen Moore, the Western Michigan guard, who's also at the Senior Bowl. And you watch him, it's the same concept. Big guy who moves extremely well for his size. And as a former offensive lineman, that makes me so happy. It makes me excited because I see the potential and why they took these guys. And like we talked about, forecasting, maybe they're the future left and right guard of the San Francisco 49ers. We'll find out. But again, great competition in camp. That offensive line is only going to get better. Alex Mack, he's getting long in the tooth, as they say. So you never know. He could go down with the injury. One of these, Brunskill might have to slide down to center. You just never know. But what we do know is that the 49ers have done a great job building out depth in all these. All right. Focus is telling us to go check out Aaron Banks' story right now. Since we're talking about Aaron Banks, literally, I will and see what happens.
On another phone?
Two phones.
Two phones.
So Banks is just pulling up to Levi's, but it's
okay.
It's dope. So go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, you know what's funny, and this is my first year doing like straight up draft evaluation, right? And the draft starts in Mobile. Isn't it funny how all this happened, man? Like we were out there, and then all of this. This is where we started to like look at these guys and everything, and then you realize how many of these guys actually made it, to get drafted, and how important the Senior Bowl was to everybody's evaluation because there was so little tape, throughout the year. I just find it crazy that my first year, not yours. My first year, doing this, it came from there and it ends with the draft. That's why when I say I feel a little, not worn out, but just like, okay, now this is done, and we went from, hey, who are we looking at?
Worn out.
Right. Like, I feel like, hey, we were at pick 12. We're like, all right, who are we getting at 12? And then things went into hyperdrive when they traded up to 3. And, this draft process has been so I don't think we're going to be able to have a draft process like this again. I don't suspect the 49ers going to be picking at 3 for a long time. and all of this stuff, with COVID and with what happened with the year before, made this the most interesting draft in such a long time. That's why this was the second most watched draft in the history of the NFL, right? And that's why the NFL implored the 49ers to stay away from giving up, who they were going to take at 3. And it's just, I'm now that I'm looking back at everything and the events, right? Like starting from there all the way through, this process has been long. It's been fun.
Wild.
I'm not going to lie. It's been fun. It's been wild. But yeah, like when I got back Sunday, I slept the entire day. I put my phone on do not disturb, and I just was like, I'm going to sleep. This is it. Like we'll get back. We'll get right back Monday in the saddle, and we'll get back to it. But man, a lot of work put in, and I just want to say, we did it. You did it. I did it. Everybody who was invested in all this stuff. Yeah, we made it. Yeah, that's it. And then that Sunday was the Sunday that we didn't know if we were going to be alive, and we made it past there too. So I mean, this entire draft season, this entire draft season has been a blast, honestly. And I don't think that we're going to be able to duplicate this because the 49ers are not going to be in this position again to be picking at 3. So it's yes, we're tired, but I'm also happy that the journey happened, honestly, and I'm happy that we were able to go through this, honestly, because I learned a ton about scouting from you, from everybody else, and how things go, and this has just been a blast, man. It's just pardon us if this week we're just like light on concept because we're just like oh man.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels that way because obviously we were doing live the entire draft, back-to-back 5-hour lives on top of doing lives before those lives. And doing all that stuff when Sunday and Monday hit, dude, I swear to you, I was like, I've never been this exhausted in my life. I'm still having a hard time. Like, I'm trying to wake up in the morning. I'm like, why can't I wake up? I feel like it's like my brain and my body had been preparing since the Senior Bowl, and it's been like a gap that's just been closing and closing and closing until you got to the draft and we made it. And now it's like my mind, like I think just was like, all right, I need a break. Like you've been taxing me the hell out, but it's been a while. It's been wild. We made it, man. We made it,
dude. One more reason that I'm super I guess wiped is because flew to Cali, to mess around with you guys or whatever.
That's right,
and then as soon as I get back, go right to Cleveland. Like I don't want to see a plane for a long time. Honestly, I really don't.
I feel it, man. So like we said, it's been a long process. Jason and I were both at the Senior Bowl. In fact, that's where we actually met in person for the first time. Mm-hmm. And that's where this whole journey has just really kind of has taken us from there. And again, we talked about a little earlier, we had 5 or 6 guys selected who were at the Senior Bowl. And it's true, the draft really starts in Mobile. That's where everyone starts to get acclimated and get ready for this crazy draft process. But you're right. I hope we are never picking at 3 again and need a quarterback again. And Trey Lance is our quarterback for the next 20 years.
We're good. I think we're good here.
We're good. So, do you want to talk at all? Maybe we'll touch on the defensive backs that were added before we wrap up. But so the 49ers drafted Talanoa Hufanga, safety out of USC, as well as Ambry Thomas and Demo. Did you say his last name Lenoir? I don't even really know.
Lenoir. Yeah, I'm going to say Lenoir. Lenoir. I'll try that one.
Very fancy, French name.
Yeah, right. Like noir. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we've made it through that process. And of course, we knew going into this, Barrett's on a 1-year deal. K1's on a 1-year deal. Your guy Tart's on a 1-year deal. I think Marcel Harris is on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, Marcel Harris and Moore. Yeah.
Are in the last years of their deal. So the 49ers go ahead and they grab 3 defensive backs. What are your thoughts on just that whole process? Do you like the guys? What are your initial feelings?
So Ambry Thomas is a good pick. He profiles as almost like a Witherspoon type. He's 6 foot. The one thing that I do like that he adds is the kick returning stuff, which is, I think that's something that the 49ers need to address, and that's why I wouldn't be so opposed to Richard Sherman coming back because that he can teach Thomas how to play in the scheme. And also, we know Sherman's one of the smartest guys who's ever played football. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a problem to have him come in and coach up the cornerbacks because the cornerback depth was an issue, right? Once it's past Jason Verrett and Emmanuel Mosley, who's there? Tim Harris, Like it's not really much there. Dante Johnson, right? So, I mean, not that they're not trying to downplay them. I'm just saying you needed to add the depth. And one more thing that I want about Richard Sherman coming back also, too, that people aren't evaluating. Let him talk to Trey about looking at defenses and what they should be looking at, honestly. He has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that stuff. Why can't he just sit in the room with Trey a little bit and say, look, man, this is what we're looking at here, here, here. I think that's the part that people are missing when it comes to that. But when you talk about Ufangu, am I saying his name right? I just want to make sure. I gotta work on this, honestly.
Hufanga. I gotta work on it too, but I think it's Hufanga. Yeah.
Right. He profiles more as a box safety, right? And I think that's exactly right what you're talking about with the safety position. Look, we know Jimmy Ward's not going anywhere. Tart is on a 1-year deal. I would love to see him finish his career with us, but, who knows what's going to happen down the line. Again, this team did a great job of understanding who's going to be under contract, who's going to be where, and what you needed to address. So it was a good move because you do need that sort of depth, right? And you do need that. So, and like you said, KK is on a 1-year deal as well, too. So when it comes to the secondary was the thing that I wanted them to address in free agency. I wanted AJ Boye, wanted Casey Hayward, didn't get either of those guys, but they did address it in the draft. So with Thomas, I'm excited because he's a bigger guy, 6'1", I believe. But the kick returning thing is really a nice feather in the cap. And the same thing with Hufanga. He's a hitter in the box, honestly. And that's I think that kind of tips off what D'Amico is going to want to do with Tart and Ward. They're going to be roaming the box a little bit more. You're probably going to see Tart blitz a lot more. You probably will see him maybe pick up tight ends like he did in 2017. So I think that's kind of showing you a little bit, tipping the hand of what D'Amico wants to do with this. It's not going to be straight up cover 3 anymore. Even last year, they moved away from it and they went to more man, a lot of quarters and stuff like that. But I think that this defense is going to be a lot more aggressive with who they blitz with, where they're going to come with, and where they're going to keep guys in the box as well, too. We saw it last year. Tarvarius got to roam the box for a little while. And now I think that's what they're going to really do with whoever is going to be, in the box, whether that's going to be Tart, whether that's going to be Hufanga. So I think that kind of tips their hand as far as what D'Amico is going to want to do. So excited for the depth. And I think that they were all great picks. Admittedly, I had to go back and look at, Thomas and those guys and stuff like that. But I like what I saw. And I love the idea of him bringing that kick return prowess that has been kind of missing from this team.
So one of the things that I stumbled upon when looking into Ambry Thomas, Jim Harbaugh liked using him on offense. They liked using him on end arounds. They actually used him quite a bit and handed him the football. So, and like you also mentioned, he was pretty much the primary kick returner, punt returner, all those kinds of things. So clearly he's a fantastic athlete. And I think that's the biggest thing to take away is he's an athlete. And when you have athletes, you can bring them in, you can coach them up on the technique, on how to key, on what to read, those kinds of things. That comes with maturity and things like that. And again, to your point, maybe if you have a Richard Sherman in that room to help, again, bring these guys on, show them what to do on the field, on game time situations, all that kind of stuff. And who knows? The point you made is who's behind Verrett and Mosley? And we're looking at Verrett, like we know Verrett had a Pro Bowl year last year and he stayed clean and he stayed healthy. But we know it doesn't matter based on your history or not. It doesn't matter. It's football. There's more chances of you getting hurt than not getting hurt. So why not put that depth there and have that and have them compete and go into camp with Sherm? Like you said, he has a captain's patch. So that goes much further than just being a leader of the defense, the cornerback room, the DB room. He's a leader of the entire team. So I'm totally open to bring him back. I think it'd be a cool scenario to get Sherm back. And then also on top of that, Ambry Thomas, the athletic ability that he brings. And then you bring in Lenore, Demo. Honestly, when I watch the tape, I'm like, all right, there's our K'Wan Williams replacement. He looks built for the slot. Yep. He's a smaller guy, but he's gritty. You can tell he likes to throw hands. He's really good at throwing his hands on these receivers, playing press at the line, doing all those kinds of things. Got good hips, good movement. He's just smaller, and he's kind of like K'Wan. So just like the theme that we've talked about, Trey is kind of like why am I blanking on his Trey Sermon is kind of like I keep forgetting his name, the running back. Elijah
Mostert.
Trey Sermon and Wilson, they're kind of built in the same mold, right? They're kind of built in the same mold. Then you look at Demo, and then you look at K1, they're kind of built in the same mold. You look at Mosley, you look at Ambry, they're kind of built in the same mold. So you're kind of seeing how they're playing this stuff out. And so I think it was a good situation where they bring in this guy who can come in and compete right away and bring great depth. And like you said about Hufanga as well, I think he's going to be in the box guy. Just like you said, he's going to come in. He could play linebacker. He could be like Flanagan Fowles, who was a safety. They moved him to linebacker, things like that. So you can kind of see how this team is getting put together and built, and all these pieces being added in free agency, in the draft. And now that you see the whole picture put together, how are you feeling going in to this season with seeing the roster constructed as it's been constructed?
Yeah, I feel great. Honestly, they've addressed every position of need. I would like to see them bring in one more wide receiver. Like I said, Golden Tate, Dede Westbrook, one of those guys. Somebody that you can add in that has veteran experience, and that if they're pressed into duty. One more thing that I'm going to say about bringing in Golden Tate is he gets to see his best friend Jalen Ramsey twice a year, and who wouldn't want to see that? Honestly, he's going to get a chance to lock horns with him as well. So.
He'll get to see Russell Wilson too twice a year, and that story.
Line, you kind of. Right, exactly. but you get to address everything, and you get to also put the league on notice on what you want to do. The draft kind of tips you off as to what the offensive philosophy is going to be this year, and what the defensive philosophy is going to be when you look at how they're trying to on the back end take care of guys as well too. So I love the draft. Honestly, it didn't really register off the bat for me until you start to really sit there and you analyze this roster and you see how they went about it. I couldn't be happier, honestly, with this draft.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Again, obviously we've talked about the reasons why we are excited and going into the season, and now we have, I believe, the first round of off-season work is May 14th to 16th. So we'll get to see some visuals come out of that. We'll get to see some of these guys working for the first time. So it's going to be, all things considered. And again, looking how the roster is constructed, I think this team is built and ready to compete and do a lot of damage in 2021. Again, it's just making sure everyone's doing their job, executing as it is expected to be executed. And if that occurs, I don't see why this team can't make a push. I don't see why this team can't go back to the playoffs, doing the things that we've talked about, running the football, play action, getting after the passer, doing all those kinds of things, playing good coverage and defense. I think this team's built and ready to go. So it's going to be exciting to see how the competition plays out in camp, but we got plenty of time before that happens. Before we break, is there anything you want to part with, Jason?
No, honestly, thanks for having me again. And like I said, this experience was fun. It was something that I'm never gonna forget. I almost can't wait for Mobile next year already. To get back and start all over again. But I do need some time to relax a little bit. While and then we can prepare our arguments for Trey versus Jimmy week 1. And we can get into all of that later on. But this week should have been more about reflection on the team, reflection on what everybody else is doing, what you're looking at from this team. And, just enjoying, and I'm saying, looking back and enjoying the process. And I can't wait to get it on and do it again next year. So, yeah, man, thank you again. And, I'm happy with this draft, and 49er fans should be excited. Quarterback of the future, roster still intact. How many teams pick at 3 and still have a chance to make a run at a Super Bowl? Not many.
Not many. So you said it. We're going to take some time now to reflect, relax, recharge, figure out what the next storylines are so we can beat it into the ground and talk about that to death. But like you said, this offseason has been a lot of fun. We've been able to, meet a lot of cool people, connect, do a lot of cool things. And of course, just talk about the sport and team that we love, which is 49ers and football. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. And we'll have a good idea here in the next coming months. But we'll still have plenty to talk about until then. So I appreciate you hopping on, Jason, as always. Make sure you follow my guy on Instagram, Twitter. You know where to find the mayor. If you want to help them find you, where would they find you?
So, yeah, so you can follow me on IG. Honestly, with IG here, I just, I post 49er stuff, but I post more stuff about my daughter on Twitter at Jason Aponte 2103, and my YouTube channel, Jason Aponte on YouTube, is gonna have all of my content on there. So we're getting ramped back up, and next week we'll be back in the saddle. Hopefully, get some good roundtables going, get some good guests for you guys, and give you some premium content.
Hell yeah. So make sure you're following Jason, man. He's always bringing it. And we'll see how this thing plays out in the next couple months, man. It's going to be fun. But thank you, as always, for hopping on, brother. It's been a blast. These past 4 months have been awesome. It's been great. And we'll see how the next 4 months play out. But I appreciate you hopping on.
Yep. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, bro. All right, man.
All right.